Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today we have a book club session and we're talking about A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. I also want to mention again that this video may contain spoilers. I'm kind of assuming that you have read the book or won't read the book if you're watching this video, so you have been warned. There may be spoilers, but you're very welcome to watch if you choose to. Okay, so let's move on to the third and final book and something a little bit more fun, kind of. There is a lot of humor in this, but I also feel like it's a sad day when this is the lighter read. But anyways, this is a novel set in Sweden, a contemporary novel about a man called Ove, who is quite bitter and a bit cynical and doesn't really trust people around him. He is wanting to end his life, and at the start of the book we don't know why that is or why he is the way he is, but as the story goes on we get more and more insight into what he has been through and what has made him the way that he is. Lots of humor in this and lots of heartwarming situations, and also lots of sadness and heart-wrenching moments. Overall, I loved this book. This is the first time I read it. I've seen the Swedish movie adaptation of this before, and I thought that was really good as well. I think the book is even better, as it usually is with books and movies. You just get so much more out of a book, I think. You guys put in so many good questions about this story, so I think I'm going to focus mainly on them. So the first question is from Renee at Beyond Books. Thank you so much, Renee, for your questions. Do you know or have you ever known someone like Ove? I would say yes and no. I definitely know of some older gentlemen who have sort of a similar outlook on some things and who think that, you know, you should be able to do certain things. Not as bitter and cynical as Ove is, but, you know, there are certain similarities. And I can also relate to Ove myself. I'm usually a pretty optimistic and positive person at heart. I'm an idealist and I just want the best for everyone all the time, but I have also been through some things and that can definitely make you cynical at points in your life. You know, depending on the circumstances and what mood I'm in, I can definitely look at people and just think that they're idiots and think that they should be doing things differently. I can be really triggered when people don't follow the rules, and especially, you know, simple things that are probably there for a reason. Like, I remember when I was living close to a cemetery, like I had an apartment with a view over the cemetery, and there's plenty of signs everywhere at every entry point into the cemetery that you can't like ride your bike in there. You have to walk with it. And then I would see people riding their bikes in there, and that made me irritated because I would also see the people who were visiting the cemetery and visiting graves there, and I had also been there to visit graves, and like, you don't want a bike flying past you when you're standing there having like an emotional moment and grieving someone that you love. And so things like that really bug me, and that would make me really mad. So things like that I could relate to when it comes to Ove and his outlook on life and rules and people not doing what they're supposed to. Can you think of a time in your life that you resisted change as much as Ove does? And I would have to say yes to that as well, and I'm gonna try not to cry. I think that in times of grief, change can be very hard, and I know that grief is different for everyone, but I've been through that and I had a very hard time with change. And, you know, letting go of things is very difficult when that's like all you have left of a person. And things like moving apartments is really hard when you know that that person will never visit you in the new place. It can be hard to get rid of clothes when you know that no other sweater will ever smell like that person. It can also be hard to evolve as a person and do new things in life, because it can feel like a goodbye or a betrayal almost to that person, because they didn't, you know, weigh in on that decision, and you don't know if they would approve of it or if you're disappointing that person because they're not there to tell you and talk to you about it. So yeah, I definitely have been through that, and grief is a very personal journey, and you never know what people are going through. And so I think that's what makes this story so beautiful. People don't know what Ove has been through, and so they just see him as a grumpy old man. And yeah, there's just more to the story, and the more you learn about him, the more sense it makes that he acts and thinks the way that he does. You know, you're only trusting for so long, and you're only optimistic for so long, and when the world and life keeps proving you wrong in that, you know, you lose that sense of optimism and joy for life. And so yeah. Okay, Renee, why are you doing this to me? Is there something you admire about Ove? Definitely yes. I admire that he always tries to do the right thing. He always tries to do, yeah, what's right and what's good and what he's supposed to do. He's not trying to cheat anybody else or, you know, do some bad thing to get ahead. He wants to pay his dues. Like, he wants to do what's required of him, and he doesn't expect any reward in return other than, you know, quid pro quo. Like, he just wants what he's owed and nothing more. I also admire him for judging people based on their actions and not based on who they are. He's very open-minded, and like, he says things, he calls things for what they are, but he doesn't judge people for being what they are. He judges people based on what they do and how they treat other people, and you know, their skills or their willingness to try, or like, yeah, things like that. And I think that's very reasonable. I admire his love for his wife and never giving up on her and never giving up on their rights and their needs and how they should be treated and, you know, what they want out of life. He does everything that he can for her, and I really admire that. He risks his own safety to rescue other people, and he also refrains from fighting back to bullies, and maybe he should have fought back more, but he tries to do things, you know, his way. He tries to stick to his truth and his integrity, and yeah, that's something that I admire. He also seems to care very deeply about the people in his life, and he might not say it out loud, but he shows it through his actions, and that's something that I also think is very admirable. The next question is from Nana at na. As an optimistic and usually joyful person, I found it quite hard to relate with the main character. The very grumpy and pessimistic worldview was so strongly shown that it at some point started to take away from my reading enjoyment, even when I learned where it came from. Any thoughts on that? How did you relate to and or liked Ove? And did this have an impact on your reading experience? I think that after reading Parable of the Sower and 1984, pretty much back to back, Ove was like a breath of fresh air. I didn't see a very darkness in him. I don't feel like he is evil or mean-spirited or negative without a reason, and I definitely understand what you mean. And like, I had that feeling, I think, when I read Yellowface. Like, the main character in that was so negative and whiny and paranoid, and I couldn't stand her. But that was Also because I thought she had put herself in that position, and that's why I found her so annoying, because she was just complaining about a problem that she had created herself. And I felt a lot more compassion for Ove and everything he's been through, and it made a lot of sense to me that he is that way. And I don't think I read it as, maybe there are things in the translation, like I read the Swedish original, and I think there are some phrases that just won't translate, and so I don't know if that's has any impact on it or if it's a cultural thing. I feel like there is a sort of Nordic or Scandinavian kind of sarcasm that's very familiar to me, and that can be annoying and that can be very like, ugh. But I think that this book is written with a lot of humor as well, and I feel like it's written with, I don't know how to say it, but like a sparkle in your eye is the Swedish expression. Like you're saying something a little bit negative, but it's with a smile and it's with love. And I feel like that's how this book is written. And so even when he was whining and negative, I could still accept that. So yeah, I get where you're coming from, and I definitely have had that experience as well, where it's like, get over yourself already and like stop whining. But yeah, in this case, I didn't feel that way. I had a more warm feeling, I guess, towards Ove, and so I think I just forgave him for being a bit grumpy. And then we have a few questions from Artie at Artie's Library. And the first one I think I've already answered a bit. In what ways did you empathize with Ove, and which aspects of his personality did you find harder to like? To sum it up, I have a lot of empathy for Ove, and there weren't really any parts of his personality that I didn't like. I mean, he's a bit stubborn, so that's maybe something he could work on. Other than that, I can really understand how he came to be that way. And he's been trying his best his whole life, and when things like that keep happening as they have in his life, I think it's only natural to be a bit bitter and grumpy. And I also think that he sounds a lot grumpier than he actually is, and his actions speak louder than those words to me. I think he might sound very grumpy, but he acts out of love, and so yeah, I don't really have a problem with that. How did you feel about the suicide aspect of the story? Did your views change? I'm not really sure how to answer this question. I think it's always sad when someone wants to end their life. I think it's understandable that Ove found himself feeling that way and feeling that that was the only solution. But I was definitely hoping for it not to work. It is used in a kind of humorous way, and I think that can be maybe hard to deal with for some people if they have a personal experience of that or personal connection to that. I didn't have a problem with that aspect of it personally, and I think the humor aspect is sort of what makes the book bearable at all. If it hadn't been there, it would just have been a very tragic story. I don't think it's for me to have an opinion on someone else's feeling. Like, I don't want anybody to have to feel that way, but I don't have any judgment about it. I don't see it as a moral decision in any way. I guess the only opinion I would have is how it was used in the story, and for that, I think it was done very well. It was with like regular intervals, and it sort of broke the time up in different sections, and it never felt too brutal to me. They were kind of gentle ways. So yeah, I don't really have an opinion on it. So why am I talking so much? If you have opinions on it, please share in the comments. I'm very curious to know. Has the story made you rethink anything in real life, particularly about making people feel needed? No, I wouldn't say that it made me rethink anything. I had that way of thinking before reading this, that feeling needed is something that's very important and can really be a lifesaver and can be something that can help you get out of a dark place. It's something that I know from my own experience, and it's something that I've talked about for other people as well. I think this book is a very good example of that, but no, it didn't make me rethink anything. Do you think people of our generation have lost many of the practical skills and values that Ove espouses? What do you think our generation does better? Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question to think about. And I do think that there are skills that the younger generation have lost. But I also feel like it's easy to blame the younger generation for that. And it's like, we can't learn if nobody teaches us. And I feel like a lot of people in my generation can relate to having parents who are just like fixing things around the house, and then they just expect you to know how to do it. And it's like, you never showed me what you did or what that meant or that how that works or why. So I can't just like absorb that knowledge through osmosis. Like, you have to teach me, to show me. And maybe, I mean, it's up to the younger generation to show interest. But I think that a lot of the older generation and people like Ove has been maybe more of the mindset that it's better that they just do it themselves, and they might not always be very communicative or, you know, educating type of people. And if you have that like attitude, like younger generation don't know anything and like they can never learn, like that's not a fun attitude to meet when you want to learn. And so when you're asking questions as a younger person, the older person also needs to be inviting and welcoming those questions, and like be happy to show the younger person how to do things, and not just be like condescending and make you feel stupid for asking, because it's like, how am I supposed to learn if I can't ask the question, you know? I also think that there are practical skills that we do have, like I can change a tire on a car if I have to. But I think that one thing that our generation, or like the younger generations, are better at is asking for help when we need it, to some extent at least. I also think that we're better at talking about mental health and like issues that affect us on a deeper level. I think that we're much more open about those kinds of things, like anxiety and depression and grief and lots of different things that we should be talking openly about, or like that we maybe not should, but like that we would be better off if there weren't so much stigma around those kinds of things. I also think we're better at using technology and social media to our advantage and building community through things like that. I think both the younger and the older generation can be better at learning things from each other and like teaching things to each other. There's this like opposing sides, like we're not enemies. We have a lot to learn from each other, and I just think that respect can be shown both ways and questions can be welcomed from both ways. And yeah, I think we would just all benefit a lot from that. And yeah. If you've ever read any other Fredrik Backman stories, how did Ove compare? I haven't read any other books by Fredrik Backman, but I do have Beartown and Us Against You. And I'm thinking we could read Beartown as a book club read in October, and then this one can be in November, December sometime. And I'm really excited to read those. And like I said, I've seen the Swedish movie adaptation of A Man Called Ove, and I really enjoyed that. But I think the book has a lot more to offer. So yeah, I'm really glad I read it. If you have read any other Fredrik Backman books, I would love to know what your favorites were, and if there's anyone that you didn't like as much, or if you have any other thoughts about Ove and about all of these questions that I've been answering, feel free to leave your own answers to any of the questions or anything that I've said in this video in the comments, and we can continue discussing there. Thank you so much to everyone who joined in and read a book or two or three, and who asked questions and participated and who are discussing in the comments and all of that. And of course I have to mention the books that we're reading in August, which is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller and Pachinko by Minjin Lee. And I think these two are going to be super good and super interesting, and we're going to have lots to talk about these two books as well. And I'm very happy that none of them are dystopian. Yeah, I'm hoping I'm going to have a good time with these. And yeah, I think that is it for this video. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. And you had so many great questions, so the majority of this video is going to be based on those questions that you sent in to my television program.